What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the NFL Betting Show right here with FTN. We are for the numbers, helping you win that cash. I'm the host of Spitting Statistician Dane Martinez. With me today is the prop god and prop. I cannot believe we are already at week 15. It seems like, just yesterday we were talking about the Chiefs and the Ravens and that opening game and Isaiah Likely's foot just barely going out of bounds. But we're in the playoff push, and there's some good matchups this week, prop. I mean, battle of like Pennsylvania, right? With the Steelers and the Eagles. I think Packers Seahawks is really interesting. Starting tonight, even with Rams Niners, that's a big game in the NFC West. But we are getting down to it, prop.
Yeah, a lot of important divisional games, which is what you love to see as just a football fan at this time of the year. So, who would have thought the NFC North would be the best division in football? I thought it would be the AFC North, and then we get the Browns just completely not competing in the division. So, they beat the Ravens. They beat the Ravens and Steelers, but just record wise, not in the mix for the playoffs.
And it always happens like that in that division. And that's why these divisional matchups are interesting, because you think the Browns are the worst team in that division. And like you said, they get a victory against Pittsburgh. They get a victory against Baltimore. I want to ask you before we dive in, and it's connected in a little bit to one of your first plays, right? We hearing a lot of drama, quite frankly, lately. Out in San Francisco, you got Deebo Samuel talking about how he's a little frustrated. He wants the ball a little bit more. You're hearing that from Brock Purdy. And then in Philadelphia, what's supposed to be brotherly love, you're hearing Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, right? Like A.J. Brown talking about, passing is what we need to do better. You even heard Brandon Graham talking about how they used to be friends and they're not. The reason I bring this up is because there are some people out there, prop, that I guess believe in what I call the squeaky wheel kind of theory, right? Like maybe now they're going to feed A.J. Brown on Sunday. Maybe they're going to feed Deebo Samuel. Do you buy into any of those narratives that now that they're talking that they're going to get these guys involved early, especially when it relates to wide receivers? Because listen, I think A.J. Brown is having a good season. If you want to know the truth, he's having a good season.
Yeah, in these mystery games,
right? So. And you have Saquon Barkley there, a generational talent at running back, a potential MVP candidate. So, of course, it's going to look a little bit different. But do you put stock into any of those narratives?
I do. Usually, I'm probably going to bet on Deebo tonight, especially with it being a primetime game. And he's got great history against the Rams. And then it's a great matchup because the Rams defense is Swiss cheese. So, when it comes to the Pittsburgh thing with A.J. Brown, I think he's matchup proof. Like, it don't matter who he's facing. We've seen Joey Porter, he had 6 holding penalties or something like that last week, so he can be had. But I think the bigger story in Philly is Saquon trying to break Eric Dickerson's all-time rushing yards in the season record. So that was my angle.
I'm with you. I just want to tell you, I'm also on the Deebo, and I think it's interesting tonight, not only his receiving yards, but maybe his rushing yards as
That's
well.
What I really like.
Because listen, Garendo is banged up. Are they really going to go to this kid Patrick Taylor in a big time prime time divisional matchup? I think one of the beneficiaries could be Deebo getting a good 5-6 touches out of the backfield. I saw a rushing yards number for him at about 15.5, which is something that he can do on just 2 end rounds, if you want to know the truth. So I like what you're talking about kind of in that rushing yard side, but you're talking about Saquon trying to get after Dickerson, trying to get the 2,000 yards, and you think he's going to get a healthy chunk of it this week against Pittsburgh.
Yes, sir. So you're going into it. Saquon is 482 yards, just rushing yards away from Eric Dickerson. So he has to average 120.5, so pretty much 121 yards per game over these next 4. He's got great matchups outside of this Pittsburgh game, but I think Pittsburgh is a sneaky spot for running backs. Now, on paper, it doesn't look as good, only 79 rushing yards per game. But if you look at some of the premier backs against Pittsburgh, they've been able to perform. So Chase Brown, he's not a premier guy, but he had 100 rushing yards against Pittsburgh. That was from some explosive plays, too.
Yeah.
Nick Chubb, 1 for 60. Henry 65. Tyrone Tracy, 150. He's got that explosiveness to him, just like Saquon does. Breece Hall, 141 rushing plus receiving yards. I'm looking at right now. So, and then with the number on Saquon, it varies at different books. That's why it's good to line shop. Shout out to the FTN.
Prop shop, baby.
The prop shop. Why do I always forget the
name? There it is right there. The prop shop. It's on the bottom, baby. Get the best value on your numbers. You know what it is.
Yes, sir. So if you look at books like FanDuel and stuff like that, you'll see 116.5. But if you line shop it, I found at Caesars 113.5, and the hit rate is way higher. So if you take it up to 116.5, he's over in 8 out of 13 games. But that 113.5, 10 out of 13. So we're getting 2 more wins pretty much at this number. He's over in 4 straight. He's averaging 145 rushing plus receiving yards per game. Pittsburgh can be had from running backs in the passing game, allowing the 8th most receiving yards to backs, and then the average of their longest reception allowed from running backs. They're 6th worst in the NFL. So I think Saquon will continue to have the volume, and AJ Brown probably will be a little upset, but the right way to go is for Saquon this week against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, AJ Brown will get his, but Saquon Barkley is working on a potential MVP season. And I mean, I saw something this week, Prop. Saquon has been stopped at the 1-yard line 11 times so far this season. 10 of them have turned into Jalen Hurts tush pushes. None of them have been touchdowns. Can you imagine Saquon's fantasy value and his MVP candidacy? Not even if all 11, but if half of them, if 5 more touchdowns
maybe,
go on his resume, right? What it could be. But absolutely, I'm with you. I'm trying to find ways to play Saquon as well. Let's stay hot here on the NFL Betting Show. By the way, last week, I went 3 for 3 on my props. James Conner went over. Chase Brown went over on his rushing and receiving. Sam Darnold, I had over 240. He put up 3-something against Atlanta. So let's do it. I'm going back to a well that I have been looking at for the last month. This guy has really been ascending with his rookie quarterback, Bo Nix. I'm going Courtland Sutton over 69.5 receiving yards against the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, Prop, it's 69.5. He's gotten 70 or more yards in his last 6 games. He's had 97 or more yards in 4 of his last 6 games. He's had 8 or more targets in his last 6 games. So the volume has been there. He is, in my opinion, the unquestioned alpha in the passing game in Denver. And Bo Nix is starting to feel himself as well, starting to rely. Over in the fantasy world, this dude, Courtland Sutton, half the time over the last month and a half has put up a top 7 finish in terms of being one of the top wide receivers, in fantasy. I think that continues. I also like Courtland Sutton is real good at the contested catch. We've talked about this before, Prop, with guys like George Pickens, right? Well, Courtland Sutton is no different. His 14 contested catches is 2nd most in the NFL, and I think it's a good matchup against the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts pass defense, they allow 70.4 completion percentage against them. That's the 2nd highest in the NFL, so Bo Nix should be able to complete passes even when they're contested. A guy like Sutton can still catch them. The Colts have allowed 4 300-yard passing efforts against them. That's tied for the 4th most. That's tied with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are universally recognized as one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. And the Colts give up the 6th most passing yards in the league and per game at 248. So you put all that together, I think Denver will be able to throw against Indianapolis. I think Courtland Sutton is the guy that Nix focuses on. I think Sutton is great at the point of the catch. And quite frankly, he has gone over this number each of the last 6 games. I like to bet the trend, and I think the trend continues, Prop, when it comes to Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, I love it. I cashed in on Sutton, whatever the last round when they played the Browns. I think it's just something you continue to ride with. Obviously, he's got the connection with Bo Nix. I was looking at Vele that game too, and he let me down, but I think Sutton is going to continue to be the guy. So I'm on board with you there.
Fair enough. We got some people out there in the chat always shouting out Prop the God right there. You got Sosa in the building looking for that cash. Hood Rich in the building looking for the cash as well. Let's go back to one of yours, man. I was saying I think there's big games this week. One of them is on Sunday Night Football, the Seattle Seahawks going up against Green Bay. This one is big, in my opinion, for the NFC race, and you're riding the running back, Josh Jacobs, who I think Green Bay is getting more and more involved, if you want to know the truth, right? As the weather starts to turn, this is what they got him for, right? The attempts, and they're going to ride Josh Jacobs. I'm with you. You like him against Seattle.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna keep saying this. Josh Jacobs is the MVP of the Packers offense to me because he's been able to help them out in the receiving game, but definitely on the ground. A lot of the running backs this season, the best in the league, all switched teams from last year. It's kind of crazy. So showing that running backs do matter. So over the 73.5, he is over in 6 of the last 8 games. Now he's under in the last 2. A little bit of tougher matchups. He was able to get 66 yards against Detroit. Much easier matchup this week against Seattle. So they are allowing the 8th most rushing yards per game. If we look at Jacobs' attempts, he's getting pretty much 18.5 per game. So as long as his volume stays the same, which I think it will, I think they'll lean on him once again. And the last time he seen him, it was in 2022, but Josh Jacobs had 229
Oh, I
rushing
remember
yards.
that game.
I mean, yeah, that was the walk-off game.
In overtime, he broke off like a 70-yarder. I remember that one.
229 yards on 33 rush attempts. Now, he probably won't have 33, but I think he'll be good between 18 to 22 carries this week.
All right, I'm with that. I do remember that game. And Prop, I think you make a great point there when it comes to the running backs that were switching teams, right? Like everyone's talking about how the running back is not valuable, how they're not getting paid. And let me tell you something. On certain teams, maybe not. Right. But when you're a contending team, when you are built the right way, when you have that offensive line, then all of a sudden a big time running back can absolutely make a difference, especially for a playoff caliber team that looks to be playing deep into the winter in January. I mean, you look at, I think of 4 right off the bat. We just talked about Saquon Barkley. You just mentioned Josh Jacobs, obviously Derrick Henry as well, who I may be talking about a little bit later on. And don't sleep on what Joe Mixon has been able to do for the Houston Texans as well, switching teams. I mean, if Saquon was on the Giants, guess what? He'd be getting stopped behind the line of scrimmage, behind that piss poor offensive line. All of a sudden, you put him on the Eagles with that offensive line, with a running quarterback, with weapons on the outside. They can't bring that 8th, 9th man into the box to try to be all focused on Saquon, and look what he can do. All right, let's go back over to me. I'm attacking the matchups. All right, Prop. I told you about that Indianapolis Colts matchup that I want to attack. Well, the worst passing defense in the NFL by most metrics is the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I am going with Aaron Rodgers this week, going up against him. Listen, the Jags are literally bottom 3 in completion percentage against, 3rd worst in the NFL at 69.6%. 2nd worst in the NFL. They've given up 3,600 yards in the passing game. 3rd worst in the NFL. They have given up 24 touchdowns in the passing game. The worst in the NFL in terms of 8.2 yards attempt. And here's the other part about their pass defense, which I think is good for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is an old man. Aaron Rodgers is gimpy. Aaron Rodgers needs some ayahuasca after the season is over and going to talk to his shaman. But the Jacksonville Jaguars also, Prop, don't get pressure on the quarterback. They have only 48 hits of the quarterback all season. That is 2nd fewest in the NFL. Their sack percentage is only 5%. That is also 3rd fewest in the NFL. I think that Aaron Rodgers may not be running for his life. And if you give him time with guys like Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson, he'll be able to pick them apart. Rodgers is also coming off his first ever 300-yard game as a Jet. It looks like Breece Hall may not play in this one. So I think that could be even more reliance on the passing game. And the Jags have been giving this up all season long. The only quarterbacks, Prop, who have not gone over this number against the Jaguars this season are Will Levis, Deshaun Watson, and Caleb Williams earlier in the season. I think Rodgers, especially with time and these weapons, will be able to go over that number. And the last thing I'll say about this is not scientific at all, Prop. However, Aaron Rodgers does have a little Netflix documentary coming out next week.
Yes, he does.
So you want to keep his name in the ether out there with another good game. I think he has a good one against this piss poor Jacksonville Jaguars pass defense, Prop.
Well, I'm all about fading the Jaguars every week. So when I was looking for the rest of my plays on the slate, I was torn between Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams. So I like your angle, just taking Aaron Rodgers. It's just to simplify it.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't know which it's going to be. So I always say in the fantasy game, Prop, I have a saying, it's called like the fantasy herd. And there are some teams, for example, that have a lot of weapons and you never know. Green Bay, for example, right? 1 week it's Wicks, 1 week it's Kraft, 1 week it's Watson, 1 week it's Jacobs. But I say when you have the herd, take the shepherd, in that case, Jordan Love. And if you don't know if it's going to be Adams or if it's going to be Garrett Wilson, go ahead and take the shepherd. In this case, it's Aaron Rodgers. More people out there. Crystal Farrell saying, yo, we got facts right here that Josh Jacobs is the cash cow going on. We got people shouting you out left and right, people. Prop.
What's up, chat?
Everybody, we got props. I talk about the fantasy herd, Prop. Detroit is one of those fantasy herds as well. Amon-Ra, we got guys like Jameson Williams, Laporta, and both backs. And I got to tell you something. I've been riding this guy you have been on right now for a few weeks, and he actually, as far as rushing yards, had a down game last week against Green Bay. He only had 40-something rushing yards. So I like them going back to Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's going to do well in that big-time matchup against Green Bay.
Yep. Bounce back spot. Taking on a Buffalo Bills defense that has pretty much been Swiss cheese to running backs. Every time I watch the Bills, it's just if you run the ball, you can do whatever you want against them. So I think that trend continues, especially against Detroit, where their identity is to establish the ground game first. So Gibbs over the 65.5 yards. Again, use the prop shop to get that. You can get the 65.5 on MGM or Fanatics. So he's averaging 78 rushing yards per game, and he's over 9 out of 13 games this season. They're allowing the 11th most rushing yards per game, also the second most receiving yards to running backs if you want to take the rushing plus receiving form. And I shout out to you for the explosive run rate tool. You put me on to a couple weeks ago. The Bills allowing the 7th most explosive runs in the league this season at 49 with a 14.5% explosive run rate.
Yep.
For the people who don't know what that means, that's a rush of 10 or more yards. So Jahmyr Gibbs is the king of that. I mean, Saquon Barkley's the king this season, but you know what I mean. This is what Gibbs does.
Yeah.
Bring that explosion to the running game. So I think he'll break off a couple 10-yard runs, and he should be good for about 80 yards this week.
All right, that's what's up. And listen, prop, big shout out again to the Stats Hub, right? Not only the prop shop that we use to go line shopping, get the best of the juice, get the best of the number, but the Stats Hub is really great for some of these kind of intrinsic deep stats that you can use for your props. And I love it. You said it. I've been telling you about it for a while. The explosive runs, right? Not only for the player, right? And Jahmyr Gibbs, I believe, is top 3 in the NFL in terms of his number of explosive runs and his percentage of explosive runs. And you see it with your eyes. But then also the matchup. Who are the teams that give up the explosive runs? Well, prop, the Buffalo Bills may be kind of bottom of the league in that. You know who else is bottom of the league in that, prop? The New York Football Giants. And they see Derrick Henry this week. I cannot have a better matchup. I'm going to be saying the same exact stuff you just said. The Giants allow 4.9 yards per carry. That's 3rd worst in the NFL. They allow 2.8 yards before contact, prop. That's 3rd worst in the NFL. You give Derrick Henry a little bit of time to warm up and get that locomotive going, it is a problem. You just said that the Bills allowed something like 49 explosive runs so far this season. Well, the Giants have allowed 54. You just said the Bills allow about 14% of explosive runs. Well, so do the Giants at 14.4%. That is the 3rd worst in the NFL, right? And on those explosive runs, on those 54, they've given up a grand total of 1,060 yards. Do the math. That is between 19.5 and 20 yards. Every time someone goes for more than 10, it goes for almost 20. Then you have Derrick Henry on the other side. You talk about Jahmyr Gibbs. Derrick Henry is right in the same category. 29 explosive runs, 3rd most in the NFL. Here's the thing, though. On those are a lot of times just straight breakaway 50, 60, 70-yard runs. On those 29 explosive runs, he has totaled 748 yards. That is an average of 26 yards every time that happens. I only need one time for this to happen for me to go over 20.5. He has this in 11 of his last 12 games. So you put it all together. I was looking for a way to get Derrick Henry against this Giants run defense, right? The number I was seeing was a little bit too much for me. It was like 100, 110, 113 in some places. And I just couldn't do it because I think Baltimore is going to be up by 3 scores in the 3rd quarter. And I think Justice Hill, things like that, right? But you only need one. You only need one breakaway run here for Derrick Henry. I think we're going to get it. And I think it's cash money, just like Randy Moss, that you're going to be able to get this one. We got people out here saying, yo, what's up, FTN? What's up, prop? Henry, 100-yard rushing. I'm not mad at that. I just think it's easier that he just needs one that he's going to rip off to go ahead and get that. We also have Mels Rivera saying he didn't get that last time. I think he's talking about Gibbs. So absolutely. So let me ask you this, Prop. We talked about kind of matchups that we have this week, big time games. Are there any dogs out there that you like? I mean, it's not frequent that you could get the Buffalo Bills as a dog. It's not frequent these days that you can get, Green Bay or Seattle as a home dog, let's say. Some intriguing matchups. And then quite honestly, I think it's intriguing. You got the Carolina Panthers, who have been playing better at home. They are laying points, and that's a big number with the Ravens and the Giants. You see anything else you like on the slate from a kind of game standpoint? I mean, you could get the Pittsburgh Steelers +5 right now in that game against Philly, and they've won a ton of games recently. Anything else that's kind of on your radar that you're thinking about from a game perspective?
Yeah, I'm actually seeing the Steelers at 5.5 right now.
Okay.
I'm really not mad at that. The only thing that scares me is there's no George Pickens.
Right.
So I think the Eagles may be able to force Russell Wilson into some mistakes. That's the only thing that will concern me there. I think he's turned the ball over in every game since he's been starting. But my favorite dog would probably have to be the Buffalo Bills. I think that's a heavyweight bout right there. Could be a potential Super Bowl match. I know a lot of people are expecting both of them teams to be there at the end of the season against each other. So with them getting 2.5 on the road in the Dome, Josh Allen against that Lions secondary, I think we should be in for some fireworks. And I think the Bills could pull that off. So they probably be my favorite dog.
All right, I'm intrigued by Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay has been playing good ball lately, against the Chargers. Chargers are a good team, but that field goal, Chargers play a lot of close games as well. I'm getting the full field goal. I like the potential even there for the back door when Baker in the passing game, need to do work at the very end. And, don't look now, but Tampa Bay might win this division. I know they don't have the tiebreaker against the Atlanta Falcons, but they have been playing very, very well. And the Chargers, that number one scoring defense, that was built up earlier in the season when they were playing backup quarterbacks and bad offenses. All of a sudden, they've started to play teams like Cincinnati. They gave up a big number. And I think Tampa Bay is an underrespected offense and with an underrespected quarterback in Baker Mayfield. So for me, Tampa Bay to stay within the number against the Chargers is intriguing as well. What's going on, Pop? What can we find you doing the rest of the week? I know you got trenches. I know you're giving out on playback. I know you're giving out props left and right. What are you doing the rest of the week? How can people continue to get paid by following the God?
Yeah, the rest of this week, so I got a Thursday Night Football article for tonight's game. I got the NFL route tree coming out tomorrow for my favorite wide receivers this week. And I got the playbook coming out on Saturday for just about 3 of my favorite props on the board. So other than that, Screams, I'll be live tonight on playback and on Sunday for the both primetime games.
All right, fair enough. We talked about Debo a little bit earlier. I also, I'll go back to the well on Puka Nacua. His number is in the high 80s. He's got 98 or more yards, 4 of his last 5. He's had 13 or more targets in 3 of his last 4 games over the last month. His 556 yards, his 42 catches, and his 58 targets all lead the NFL. Matthew Stafford is keeping it locked in on him, and I think that's another way that you can go. Last up, thanks for everybody for checking us out. Man, to the people, for real, people out there giving you the love as always. So for my man Prop, I am merely the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez. You can catch me 1 to 3 p.m. every day on SiriusXM on the Fantasy Channel, trying to help you win your leagues and win that cash. We will be back next week where it'll be week 16, trying to get you paid. Go on in there, make those plays, and come on back next week when your balance is a little bit higher, and you can thank us then. All right, Prop. We'll see you next time. We out of here. Peace.